here with us now in the studio, MSNBC analyst, retired General Wesley Clark. Thanks for coming in. You generated a lot of conversation on the show yesterday, and it pertains to this comment that you said about John McCain. I'm going to read it. The truth is that in national security terms, he's largely untested and untried. John McCain, this is what you're talking about. He's never been responsible for policy formulation. He's never had leadership in a crisis or in anything larger than his own element on an aircraft carrier or in managing his own congressional staff. It's not clear that this is going to be the strong suit that he thinks it is. McCain's weakness is that he's always been for the use of force, and more force. In my experience, the only time to use force is as a last resort. When he talks about throwing Russia out of the G8 and makes ditties about bombing Iran, he betrays a disrespect for the office of the presidency. I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, don't you think it's kind of a dangerous thing to say about someone who was a war hero, POW, for several years? This is John McCain we're talking about. Well,
I think it's a fair evaluation, because I think what you learn coming up through the ranks in the military, and I stayed with the military I started as a service academy. I served in Vietnam. I didn't do what John McCain did. I did come home on a stretcher. But as I went through the ranks, and I was a major and a lieutenant colonel and a colonel, and at every stage I learned something more and something different. And the Army always told us, they said, you know, remember, the thing that got you promoted to where you are is not the skill, the intuition or whatever that's going to get you promoted to the next rank. You had to learn at each step along the way. And later I was a Supreme Allied Commander. I helped hold an alliance together. I helped set the strategy that won a war without any American casualties. I watched people under that kind of pressure, and I realized that, you know, John McCain was a senator. He supported my actions, but his support was rhetorical. He wasn't responsible. He's not been responsible. He hasn't felt the brunt of the responsibility. He hasn't felt the anguish of uncertainty.
But doesn't he have credibility?
And that makes a big difference.
Oh, but doesn't he have credibility when it comes to the insight of the horrors of war, of the issue of torture, of decisions that have to be made when we lead this country into the future?
Well, I'd like to think he has a lot of credibility when it comes to personal commitment, to willingness to sacrifice, and to his own personal courage as an individual who suffered horribly as a prisoner of war. But on the other hand, he's changed his position on torture. At one point he said he was against it. Now he's in favor of it. He's even come out against the Supreme Court decision that was made yesterday on the prisoners at Guantanamo. So, you know, what does John McCain really believe? Who is he? Is he the sort of straight talk express maverick that people thought he was in the late 90s, or is he just a guy who wants to be president and he'll say what's necessary to get the job?
General, you know, I think we all understand, you know, the rhetoric of campaigns and things that people say in the course of a political campaign. But yesterday, Huffington Post stuff, what Mika just reiterated, the truth is that in national security terms, he's largely untested and untried. He's never been responsible for policy formulation.
Okay, stop.
He's never had. Well,
has he been responsible for policy formulation?
You could say that same thing about Barack Obama. The exact same thing.
Yeah.
Barack Obama is not running on the basis of his national security experience. He's running on the basis of good judgment.
He's running on the issue of the Iraq War.
That's why it's important to set the record straight. John McCain served. He served honorably and well, and we all admire what he did as a prisoner of war. John McCain, in national security leadership terms for the office of the presidency, is largely untested and untried. He has not been there. Barack Obama doesn't claim that. Barack Obama has other strengths he brings.
What's the biggest difference between John McCain's position on our role in Iraq right now and going forward over the next 2 years and Barack Obama's?
Well, Barack Obama has a strategy for bringing us out of there and leaving us success. John McCain has a strategy for keeping us in there as long as he can. I think there's a big difference.
Whoever's elected president, assuming it's Senator Obama, General Clark, what would be the first piece of advice you would give the next president the first 90 days on how to confront and approach the situation in Iraq?
Get a strategy for the region. But you've got to build a strategy. Strategy is not like some guy writing on a blackboard, E equals MC squared. You've got to talk to people. You've got to talk to the military. You've got to talk to the diplomats. You've got to talk to your allies. You need to consult with the United Nations and the leaders in the region. What is that strategy? How do we put together the right strategy?
Would you reduce our troop level from? We just had Richard Engel on who said reducing the troop level could create some challenges if you do it over the next 12 months. You're a four-star general. How would you recommend in terms of the troop levels in Iraq?
Well, I think it's a very important play to ensure that the Iraqis understand we're coming out. So I would start right away with a withdrawal, but I wouldn't publish a timeline, and I would leave that flexible, and that's part of the dialogue and the exchange. Maybe you have to accelerate it, maybe you decelerate it, maybe you tell the Iranians, you know, you guys need to let loose of Iraq. If we see you letting loose, then we'll come out sooner.
General Wesley
stay in
Clark,
there, we'll be there.
sounding like a vice president. Is that possible?
You know, I think it's entirely presumptuous.